You have to see this. A Russian Ka-52 is chasing a Ukrainian drone over the center of Moscow. Flamingo missiles have destroyed a strategic plant of the Russian military-industrial complex in the Chuvash Republic. Furious after Zelensky's visit to Armenia, Simonyan threatens Yerevan with a new special military operation. A bold move. Zelensky has announced a ceasefire starting May 6th. Putin is out of it. Chaos on Red Square. Snipers on the Kremlin towers. The Ukrainian Armed Forces are preparing to strike the parade. In Moscow and St. Petersburg, communications have been cut off for 5 days. All airports are closed due to constant drone attacks. A new record, the Ukrainian Armed Forces have bagged 35,000 Russian soldiers in a month. Kim Jong-un has called on North Korean youth to prepare to take part in the war against Ukraine. They might go for Kyiv and Odesa. There is abnormal military activity on the border of Transnistria and Belarus. It's begun. Students are rioting in Yekaterinburg. Akhmat is no more. In the Sumy region, the Ukrainian Armed Forces eliminated more than 200 Kadyrovites. The Russian army has had its worst month at the front. In some places, they're even retreating. Hello, my name is Karina Klishuna, and right now, let's talk about the main news. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with each other. Across the internet, on YouTube, Moscow barely had time to recover from yesterday's drone attack. By the way, the footage of their Ka-52 chasing the Ukrainian FP-1 drone is really something else. And then, another Ukrainian innovation blew up an entire factory in Cheboksary.
Another one is coming. Holy shit, I cannot believe what I'm seeing right now. Shit, this is absolutely insane. Oh my God, shit. Can someone tell me what on earth is happening right now? Where are the cups?
Last night, Flamingo missiles struck the Russian electronics factory near Progress in the Chuvash Republic.
The factory is a key part of the ABS Electro Production Association. It manufactures GNSS receivers and antennas for the aggressor army for satellite systems such as GLONASS, GPS, and Galileo, including Cometa-type modules. These are actively utilized in drones, which include the Shahed-type kamikaze drones, as well as in Iskander-M and Caliber missile systems, and in UMPK precision planning kits for aerial bombs.
And it wasn't just a single strike. Already in the morning, the so-called All-Russian Scientific Research Institute of Relay Engineering with its pilot production facility was attacked by Ukrainian Lyuty drones. Good drones were flying, and as usual, the Kirishi oil refinery in the Leningrad region was hit, one of the largest refineries in Russia in terms of processing volume and fuel production. The night in Russia was exceptionally tense, as a missile alert was declared in 18 regions, even reaching the Khanty-Mansi Autonomous Okrug, situated 2,000 kilometers from the border. Later, Zelensky himself confirmed that the Cheboksary plant was hit by the Flamingo and showed how it was launched. Air defense in Russia is clearly on pause for now because, as we've noticed, drones and missiles fly in there without even knocking. Attacks on Russia have stopped being a rarity and have finally become routine, especially after all the air defense systems were dragged to Moscow. The regions are left exposed. It seems the farther you are from decision-making, the closer you are to the center of impact. To be or not to be, that is the question. Against the backdrop of powerful strikes on Russia's infrastructure, the Kremlin is whining about what they really need: a ceasefire. And in Russia, they're talking about May 8th and 9th, so they can hold a parade on Red Square. The Russian Ministry of Death has already made an official statement about this. But guess what? No one has actually contacted Ukraine about a ceasefire. But the Kremlin did discuss these plans with the US.
The Americans talked with the Russians about what might happen on May 9th. Ceasefire or no ceasefire. No one has officially contacted us or made any official proposals.
Such arrangements seem, you have to admit, strange. So far, it feels like the Kremlin is asking for permission to hold the parade.
There is no truce. In this way, Putin has demonstrated his inability to ensure the parade format. We are seeing a significant reduction in the program, a reduction in the use of equipment. He asked, let me put it delicately, the word asked. Did they make it possible for him not to look useless? May 9th? And that's it. This isn't about a truce, it's about a few hours during which Putin will appear on Red Square and declare that he is defeating everyone, that he's taking Kupiansk and so on.
Meanwhile, Ukraine isn't sitting idly by. And if Russia doesn't make a truce proposal, Kyiv offers one itself. But of course, on its own terms. Zelensky announced that a ceasefire began at midnight today. We
firmly believe that human life is a far more significant and precious value than the celebration of any particular anniversary. Therefore, we are officially declaring a ceasefire starting at midnight on the night of May 5th to 6th. It is realistic to ensure the onset of silence in the time remaining before this moment. We will act reciprocally, starting from the specified moment. It's time for the Russian leaders to take real steps to end their war, especially if the Russian Ministry of Defense believes it cannot hold a parade in Moscow without Ukraine's goodwill. And
let's note the ceasefire has no end date. And what do you think? Whose ceasefire has a better chance of lasting? Because as for me, I don't trust Russia at all. And here's another interesting point. Even despite the declared ceasefire, the Russians both want that parade and are wary of it. Since it is one-sided, the likelihood of a drone program organized by Ukraine is very high. That's why in Moscow they continue to take protective measures. In addition to armed men appearing on the Kremlin towers and checkpoints being set up at the city's entrances starting today, mobile communication is being completely shut down in both Moscow and St. Petersburg for 5 days. And on top of that, air defense systems are being brought into Moscow from all over Russia. In short, Putin clearly doesn't feel safe. And are preparations for the Russian parade underway in the USSR? They are preparing and currently taking aim. Details in the report. Putin managed to turn the May 9th parade from a Russian triumph into a march. Simply of shame and fear.
A direct confrontation with neo-Nazis and Kadyrovites, on whom the United States and their junior partners have placed their strategic bets, will be unavoidable. Russia delivered a preemptive response to aggression.
Ukrainian birds are flying all over the very heart of the capital city of Russia.
Can you hear that? Oh, right there, there it is, right above my house. And
the closer it gets to the parade, the scarier it becomes.
this will be the first time there won't be any weapons at the parade, and Ukrainian drones might fly in during the parade.
Air defense systems are being brought into the Russian capital from Kazan and Grozny to protect the parade, and they plan to create several layers of defense.
Can you imagine? It's a nightmare. But that's not all.
Security cordons are set up around the entire capital. There are checkpoints at the entrances. Access to Red Square is blocked. Right next to the Kremlin, there are armored vehicles and SUVs. And on the walls and towers of the Kremlin, there are machine gunners. A security officer with a machine gun is even hiding on the Kremlin's Spasskaya Tower. Putin couldn't have imagined, even in nightmares, that there would literally be people with guns on every tower, wall, and just about every building of the Kremlin. Special forces will be stationed with machine guns, sniper rifles, and special equipment to stop Ukrainian drones from reaching the bunker dweller. The system set up on the rooftops of high-rise buildings turned out to be ineffective, and Muscovites are fleeing the city en masse.
Given the current situation surrounding this terrorist threat, of course, all necessary measures are being taken to minimize the danger.
And these are the consequences of a Ukrainian drone landing in a high-rise building in Moscow, 5 days before the parade and only 6 kilometers from the Kremlin. As we can see, the air defense, which was pulled into the center in panic, did not help.
Christmas, hello there. Number 1. 2.
As it turned out, the Ukrainian FP-1 passed through 3 layers of air defense. On this map, there are 101 confirmed air defense positions, and the route itself passed through the area of responsibility of at least 10 S-400 regiments, as well as dozens of Pantsir and Trans systems. Tor systems which the bunker dweller is so proud of. At the same time, memes about preparations for the event are actively spreading online. Ukrainians are joking about heightened security measures and generating funny images. Here you go. We will defeat Ukraine. 2 days before, the war reached right up to the capital of the Russian Federation. And while Ukrainians laugh at this absurdity, Putin is tearfully begging Ukraine for a ceasefire on May 9th.
Just imagine Joseph Stalin, who during a lengthy phone conversation with President Roosevelt suddenly suggests to Adolf Hitler to arrange a formal ceasefire on November 7th. In honor of the great holiday. Even Vitaly Averyanov, the deputy chairman of the Izborsk Club, said, "How is that supposed to work? It's ambiguous." On May 9th, the topic of Ukraine's denazification was supposedly raised as if there are heirs of Nazism there. And we are supposed to call upon, as it were, the heirs, the spiritual heirs of Nazism, to guarantee this outcome by May 9th.
In early April, Putin was informed about the dangers of holding the May parade. Pro-war blogger Ilya Tumanov, alias Fighter Bomber, said authorities were discussing the parade's location, Moscow or St. Petersburg.
Can you imagine, right at the moment when the parade is called to attention, suddenly an air raid is announced? And what will happen then? Well, obviously the broadcast will be interrupted, you know, but what will be happening on the square and around it?
Well, that would be quite a major and historic event, and of course it would be a very significant blow in terms of global media coverage. I even think that maybe nothing would actually reach there, but still, something definitely has to be done.
The parade rehearsal still hasn't been announced, even though it's usually held at the end of April. Rehearsals always started in Alabino, but even in the training ground group, where every year the preparations are covered by the media. There's nothing now, except for the reduction of some parts of the event in
Successfully achieving strategic goals in solving important tasks for the sake of Russia, its enduring greatness and prosperity. Glory to the nation of victors.
Putin has demilitarized the victory parade. According to the Ministry of Defense's statement, there will be no heavy equipment, which has always been present at the parade. Only cadets will march in the columns.
Students of the Suvorov Military and Nakhimov Naval Schools, Cadet Corps, as well as a column of military equipment. Due to the current operational situation, they will not participate in the military parade this year. In
the underpasses on Tverskaya Street, they put up supports just for show, and they used to block the road for the passage of that very heavy equipment.
Red Square is being intensively prepared for the events, but the number of guests has been greatly reduced. This is evident from the stands. As for the general rehearsal, the announced date was May 4th. But these dates keep changing.
The skies above will be completely closed. The majority of Russians we'll see this year are the Swifts, who have always participated in the air part of the victory parade, while their show is still being considered. In Moscow, they are planning to temporarily disable all mobile internet during the May holidays.
All's going as planned. As planned. According to plan. According to plan. According to plan. Just according to plan. Right on schedule?
Only a small number of leaders will attend this parade. Yes, I realize that this year, without Xi Jinping as a kind of umbrella, the Kremlin is especially vulnerable. As we can see, Putin is trying to avoid public humiliation, above all in the eyes of his own people. But so far, he hasn't succeeded. By the way, because Putin wanted to hold the parade but got seriously scared, they had to defend Moscow by any means necessary. After air defense, the plan was a carpet coverage. Hundreds of flights were canceled in Moscow due to the threat of UAVs. Airports stopped operating. Moreover, both Moscow and St. Petersburg were left without internet. It's impossible to call a taxi, buy groceries, use an ATM, or really do anything at all.
Moscow at Lukoil. We passed the MK, the internet was cut off. The attendant says only cash is accepted, nothing else works. Delivery? Nothing works. Not even a single one of the ATMs.
Even when you are shopping at Pietrochka.
Neil, And the taxi drivers found Wi-Fi at Vykusnaya Toshka and are trying to take at least some orders.
Did you see at McDonald's? At McDonald's, the guys are placing orders using the Wi-Fi.
Now they're crying because they're going back to the USSR. But it's strange, this is exactly what Putin wanted, so why complain? Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of you are watching us from Europe, Kazakhstan, Moldova, and even the USA. We, Ukrainians, are grateful for your support and proud to have such reasonable viewers. Let us know under this episode as well, which country are you watching us from, and do people there support our fight against the empire of evil? I always enjoy reading your comments. Meanwhile, we continue. The most interesting part is coming up. Meanwhile, things aren't going well for the Russians at the front either. As Zelensky said, in April, the Russians lost more than 35,000 killed and seriously wounded. Even the tactic of small groups didn't help them.
Want to live? Run.
There has also been a significant increase in the number of mid-strikes. The number of strikes at distances of 20+ kilometers has doubled compared to March. The Ukrainian Armed Forces are making progress. After all, that's 4 times more than in February. Just think about it, over 35,000 in just 1 month. These are the results of the Army of Drones' work. Russian losses exceed the pace of mobilization, which is why Putin is once again asking for help. Kim Jong-un has called on North Korean youth to prepare to participate in the war against Ukraine on Russia's side. These are men aged 14 to 30. It is known that earlier Kim sent about 14,000 soldiers to Russia for the war, but 6,000 were left to rot near Kursk. Now he has decided to, so to speak, update the numbers. It's not fun for the Ivans, not even in Africa. The Russians have started to flee from there. The African Corps is already leaving its 3rd city in Mali. According to Le Monde, after Kidal and Tessalit, Russian troops have begun withdrawing forces from Aguelhok. No fewer than 30 pieces of equipment have left the camp. The most interesting thing is that the withdrawal is coordinated. According to the publication, this is an agreement between rebels linked to Al-Qaeda, various groups, and the African Corps itself. The Russians were provided with an unobstructed exit from the region, even though Aguelhok is already surrounded. The Russians just can't catch a break. Now it's a bit clearer why. Here, for example, are soldiers from the 35th Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces. In the Belgorod region, they're smoking weed in a half-flooded dugout.
Whoa there. Take it easy. Tell us what we're doing today. Just look at the pancake.
Could you please hold this for a moment? Hold this.
And then they're surprised when Ukrainian drones find them. I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They hold the front and stand against a huge horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge you to support the armed forces of Ukraine, and if you can't do so financially, write them words of encouragement in the comments. I know they're watching us. Ukrainian intelligence conducted a unique special operation in the Sumy region to eliminate military units. Akhmat, more than 228 of Kadyrov's fighters were successfully eliminated, while Abtia Laudinov is unsuccessfully trying to justify himself. How did the agent among the Chechens operate, and how exactly did he help Ukrainian intelligence? We'll tell you all the details of the operation in the report. The main intelligence directorate of Ukraine executed a successful special operation to eliminate Kadyrov's fighters. More than 228 fighters from the Akhmat unit were driven from the front. The main intelligence directorate conducted a unique operation in Ukraine's Sumy region from February to April 2026. Ukrainian soldiers from the Shamanbat unit, including Free Chechnya fighters, along with the 104th Tiro Brigade Horin, carried out a complex operation to destroy Akhmat troops in the Sumy region.
Since 2022, I have been in Ukraine in the main intelligence directorate in Shamanbat. We are fighting against our common enemies, against the Kadyrovites, against those Russian scum.
How were our soldiers able to learn the enemy's plans so precisely and track all their actions? As reported by the main intelligence directorate, an agent was passing information about the enemy's plans and intentions to the scouts. The agent turned out to be a former soldier from that same Akhmat unit. The Ukrainians listened in on every meeting of Laudinov. According to the main intelligence directorate, the agent installed a listening device that was delivered across the front line by drones in the Akhmat unit's meeting room. All conversations were recorded. The Ukrainian side knew everything. Because they had all the information, Ukrainian units were able to strike precisely at the locations where Kadyrov's men were concentrated. The agent explained how he made contact
with them. That is exactly why I made sure to keep them completely informed about our every single step and the various actions we were taking. In February, we started an operation in the Sumy region. As soon as we started it, they immediately found out. As a result, we knew what they had done to us, how many of our people were wounded, killed, or how many went missing.
As a result of this operation, Akhmat of the GUR suffered its heaviest losses since the start of the full-scale invasion. 41 people were killed, 87 wounded, and more than 100 are missing. But of course, the Russian side does not want to admit this. Alaudinov stated,
It is clear that every single piece of this content is completely fabricated and fake. The resilient members of the Ukrainian LGBT community, who I truly must say absolutely deserve a perfect 5 for your incredibly impressive and sophisticated work with modern artificial intelligence technology. And of course, for all of the incredible LGBT work you do. You have done a fantastic job.
He also called Ukrainians storytellers, which was to be expected. But, as experts say, they will conduct a thorough self-examination after this.
High-quality content in the material when someone tries to criticize it, saying it's all lies, that it never happened. In other words, everything, at least from my point of view, looks as truthful as possible. This is not artificial intelligence, this is not a fabrication. That is, everything fully corresponds to reality. I'm sure they're working on correcting their mistakes there. No matter how you look at it, both the Kadyrovites and Russian military counterintelligence are always trying to find sources of information leaks so they can avoid this in the future.
Ukrainian intelligence has once again proven that it will find and eliminate anyone who supports aggression against Ukraine. That's why Abdel Udinov shouldn't be making excuses but should start using his head. And the Chechens should think about whether they really want to serve the Russians who once waged the same bloody war against them and leave this world in disgrace, or live a peaceful life on the side of truth. Russia may open another front. And we're not talking about Belarus, but about the unrecognized Transnistria. The Western Operational Command has reported that they are preparing a line of defense on the border with the part of Moldova occupied by the Russian Federation. The reason is clearly the Russian presence. Besides the threat from the Russian contingent, internal tensions also play a role. Amid Moldova's restrictions, the Russian occupiers in Transnistria are very nervous. The situation remains unstable. That is precisely why Ukraine is reinforcing this section of the border. Here you'll find dragon's teeth and barbed wire. But that's not all.
A multi-layered system of fortifications is actively being developed in the region. At the same time, engineering barriers are being constructed and a network of arcaded roads is being developed, which increases the mobility of units and ensures the rapid redeployment of forces if necessary. Special attention is being paid to checking combat readiness. The command inspects the units, assesses their supply, staffing, and the condition of the fortifications. They also analyze the ability to carry out tasks in the event of a possible escalation.
Now let's move to the north because unfortunately the threat from Belarus has not disappeared. The State Border Guard Service of Ukraine has stated that Russia could redeploy its military forces at any moment to Belarus and begin breaking through the border. That is why Ukraine needs to strengthen its defenses and be prepared.
Even though we can see that, at this current point in time, Russia does not have enough of its own forces or units stationed in Belarus to pose a threat to our country. At any given moment in the future, all this infrastructure that Belarus is creating could, of course, be used by Russia. And
what do you think? Could Russia open another front against Ukraine? Or will the cockroach Lukashenko be able to refuse Putin? But as I see it, these are just scare tactics, since the Russian army is suffering record losses at the front and there is no breakthrough. In April, the Russian army essentially failed its offensive. Analysts are talking about the worst results in a year and a half and a change in tactics at the front. What's behind this? Watch further to find out. Instead of the loudly announced major offensive, there was a retreat and loss of positions. April 2026, a month the Russian command will try to forget. According to the Institute for the Study of War, the occupiers not only failed to advance, but also lost about 116 square kilometers of territory. This is the worst result since August 2024 during the time of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Kursk operation.
The front line of contact is currently positioned at almost the exact same geographical boundaries as they were a year ago. This indicates that the defense forces of Ukraine not only held back the further advance of the occupiers, but also successfully counterattacked in several sectors of the front. We are talking about the successful actions of Ukraine's defense forces in the Dnipropetrovsk and Dobrovsky regions.
The statistics speak for themselves. The average rate of advance of Russian troops has dropped to 2.9 square kilometers per day. A year ago, this figure was 3 times higher, almost 10. And over the past 6 months, Russia has managed to capture only 1,443 square kilometers compared to more than 2,360 for the same period last year. In other words, the pace of the offensive hasn't just slowed down, it has collapsed. There are several reasons for this. First, the strikes by Ukraine's defense forces on enemy depots, headquarters, and logistics. Second, problems with communications. Restricted access to Starlink in the occupied territories and the Kremlin's control over Telegram have significantly complicated the coordination of units.
Ukraine's defense forces are successfully holding back the occupiers' advance in the Pokrovsk direction. The occupiers' offensive in this sector of the front has already been ongoing for more than 18 months. But
Russia is trying to convince people otherwise. One of their tactics is the so-called gray zones. Territories where there is no stable control are presented as if they have been captured. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War note that Russia's actual control is much less than what its propaganda claims. Meanwhile, the very tactics of warfare are also changing. As reported by the British publication The Telegraph, Russia is gradually abandoning mass assaults, the so-called meat grinder tactics, which resulted in enormous losses. The enemy is now switching to a different tactic.
Small groups of 2 to 4 soldiers, and sometimes even individual soldiers, advance on foot, often at night with minimal radio communication. Their task is to find weak spots in the defense, infiltrate deep into positions unnoticed, and establish themselves there. Experts note that such groups are harder to detect and destroy than larger units.
Despite attempts to adapt, the key trend for Russia remains negative. The effectiveness of the offensive has been declining for several consecutive months ever since the end of 2025.
despite all the official public statements from both the Russian Federation's political and military leadership, including at the highest representative level, about full control over Kupiansk, these settlements continue to remain firmly under the control of the occupying forces, namely the defense forces of Ukraine.
An additional blow to the enemy comes from Ukrainian attacks on economic and logistical infrastructure. In particular, ships of the so-called Shadow Fleet near Novorossiysk, which were used to circumvent sanctions and export oil, were recently struck. And while the Kremlin tries to hide its failure, the front increasingly reveals the real picture. Russia is losing momentum, territory, and initiative. Meanwhile, Pashinyan keeps giving Putin trouble. A stab in the back. Zelensky flew in to attend the summit with him. Moreover, he didn't leave empty-handed. Canada allocated $200 million for the purchase of American weapons. Of course, this is making the Z patriots furious.
Yerevan, the president of Ukraine, this is such an ungrateful move from Armenia, a country we've saved so many times that I am at a loss for words. It's time to think about protection of the Russian population and our interests in this country. If not Vladimir Vladimirovich, then his successor will definitely have to take action.
Now they're saving someone in Armenia too. A new special military operation. Also, Macron was at the summit in Yerevan. Here's how the locals welcomed him. And here's how Putin was welcomed in November 2022. And instead of applause, you hear, Russia is the enemy.
Look, it is absolutely essential for you to understand that we guys are simply not the same as wives. It is very important to remember that we guys are definitely not wives in any way, shape, or form imaginable.
Even the host of Solovyov Live has changed his tune. He claims that Russia no longer has imperial ambitions because Russia can no longer dictate to Armenia. Even Evgeny Golman doesn't believe that everything is going according to plan.
They're just destroying everything. Now in every village, the guys are lying dead. What are you doing to the motherland? This Maksutka, young people already hate him, and now he's planning to sell the internet. Here they are, the enemies of the people. Here they are, the ones working for this fifth column. Drink, mess around with dogs, a steamboat for you, a hangar for you, and you too, you bastard. Ours. You're in spirit. You're in spirit.
These are Putin's results, bravo. Meanwhile, elections in Russia are around the corner, specifically for the State Duma. Then, of course, Putin publicly ordered that everything be conducted honestly.
Parliament is an institution of legislative power. People expect integrity, dedicated service, and tangible results from those in power, of course. And secondly, the election campaign must be conducted in strict accordance with the law so that its results are transparent, reliable, and of course, legitimate.
Yes, Putin is talking about honesty. You didn't mishear. He wants his party to win honestly. That's why doctors and teachers are already being forced to honestly vote only for united Russia.
Hello, everyone. Right now, my teacher is sending a link for the preliminary voting for united Russia. Here it is. I'm attaching a screenshot here showing what the principal sent her and said that all parents should send her a screenshot proving they participated. Preliminary voting. I wrote to her that I will not vote for united Russia. I said, and don't expect any screenshots from me either. A couple of parents have already voted and sent their screenshots. But I said I won't do it. Some other parents also replied and said that some people aren't voting at all. Like it's a matter of principle for them. Someone else also said they won't vote for united Russia. In
the regions, pressure has begun on public workers, students, and clearly even parents, using the phrase, you have to. Voluntarily, forcibly, and without any unnecessary words, ladies and gentlemen, what's not clear? Life doesn't teach these swamp people anything. In Yekaterinburg, a premiere that the Kremlin didn't order, students and graduates of the State Theatre Institute staged a digital protest under the hashtag #Resign. Tired of playing roles in the scenery of a rotten system.
As for the quality of education, the quality and learning conditions, this issue was always obvious. We never had a cafeteria, even temporarily. There were always leaking roofs, cold and terrible conditions. The institute never really invested in its students. Yes, I read the stories from the guys and remember how it really was. Yes, we graduated from the institute during COVID. There was no talk of recalculating fees. For students from Kazakhstan and other republics, the borders were simply closed. How were we supposed to get home? And we were being evicted from the dormitory. They were throwing us out onto the street. We had to take some kind of action.
The main building of the institute, which is located at Vanera 2, even back then, in 2017, when I enrolled, already had a ruined facade. It was already falling apart at the seams. There were already problems with the wiring. I remember that in some of the restrooms, the lights just wouldn't turn on. They said that there would be a budget allocated for creating our performances, for props and sets. I can't tell you the exact amount now, but there wasn't any. Back then, they gave us some old rags that had been lying around for ages and smelled terrible. They stank so badly that we had to work in masks.
A professor at my institute has been harassing his students for years, but no one cares. When I was studying at the Yekaterinburg Theatre Institute, we had such a master. This is Alexander Blinov. And I have heard a wide variety of very interesting stories from his students. For example, he actually forced his own students to appear in online casino advertisements. Or he would come to his classes simply stoned. One time, he even brought a traumatic pistol with him. And for some reason, he started shooting right in the classroom.
A real masterpiece. Even future actors refuse to take part in this never-ending circus. When the building is literally falling apart and the educational process turns into a brothel, it's time to change not the repertoire, but the entire leadership of the country. That's all for now. Please like this video and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. See you next time.